Rams fans, we have a very special guest joining us for our 100th episode. Please welcome Taran Killam to the show. Taran, how are you?
House? I'm excellent. How are you? How are you? Other than, I would imagine at least a percentage of sadness that I feel from the last two games played.
Sadness is probably the thing we're feeling the most.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, you don't know how to feel, right? The bye week, you have a week without football where you just kind of have to let it sit on it and let it marinate.
Deal with your family at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that stuff's important. That's what you should be focused on, right? There's some really good stuff.
Okay, they're doing us a favor. All right.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff.
That like football could be a useful distraction from that, but no, I agree with you. I agree that I'm looking forward to it, and it is also like it was a good draw of a bye week too, that you can kind of just focus on on a good meal as opposed to a mutated, disgusting dish of loserdom, which we have been served these 2 weeks past.
I think I needed to take a break right after this episode. You got to just kind of take a break, reset. Yeah. They need to take a break. You know what I was wondering too, and I don't know if just from a personal perspective, right? You go on a bye week. What do your plans look like if you lose a game to San Francisco versus if you were to win that game? Do you go back to Cabo and do you celebrate? Or for this instance, you go back to your house in Los Angeles and try to game plan. So I wanted to get your perspective on that angle.
Like that for the team, you mean?
Well, both, coach, players.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that they're like gonna look at all these beloved third and long run plays that they love to throw out there, and maybe get a tire swing flying in front of Stafford and see if he can. I mean, I tweeted during the game, mostly joking, but also truth behind it, that I miss Goff because between the Arizona game, the Titans game, and San Francisco, like there has been no difference. If anything, exactly the same, or in some cases, like back to back this way, even worse than what Goff would put out there. Overall, people are frustrated because by the end he kind of wasn't stepping up in whatever that perceived star quality of that, that fourth quarter push, which Stafford could kind of do in Detroit, but mostly in garbage time, quite frankly. You know what I mean? And the thing I loved about Goff the most was his resilience. Was that he almost never would do back-to-back awful games, i.e., literally throwing 2 interceptions in back-to-back games to start the first quarter. Like, true fact, Stafford has given away more touchdowns to opposing teams in the last 2 weeks than he's made for his own. So it's disheartening. Is Stafford an unbelievable talent? Yes. Do I think he's capable of greatness? I do, but it's not trending positively. So I hope in this bye week they're sitting down, they're getting to know, they're familiarizing Vaughn and OBJ with the playbook schemes and in ways that could ideally help with that. But what I haven't felt this whole season is that, we're really missing talent. You know what I mean? Davis up against Green in the Arizona game was the only time where I've been like, we are talent outmatched. They are taking advantage of that outmatched talent. Otherwise, we have a really solid team. It's just like negligent mistakes that have allowed these opposing teams to kind of kick the wind out of us. And for better or for worse, you've come to expect it a little bit with San Francisco at this point, but boy, would it have been lovely to head into this bye week breaking that curse.
So I've seen you on social media, right? Like kind of before the games, your pregame routines, your routines during the game. And my wife and I just watched all of Impeachment. So the story of Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. So I could imagine you were about as angry as you were playing the role of Steve Jones, as you were in that role, as you were last night. So I want to just kind of get a perspective. I know we talked about Stafford and Goff a little bit, but tell me a little bit about your pregame routine, as I know it's probably changed over the last couple of years, how you felt during the game last night, and just more on Stafford and Goff.
I mean, pregame in general this season is different, just being in SoFi, which is so exciting. Like a sort of nitpicky gripe is they're still kind of figuring out the parking situation there. But shocker, bad traffic in LA. It's an inevitable cliche. But my pregame, I personally like to be there at least a full hour before kickoff, at least, to really kind of just enjoy. And I have many pleasant, fond memories of hanging out and partying in the Coliseum parking lot. In terms of like my outlook on the game, I always go in knowing that all teams are equally capable of winning in theory, but like I would say that I felt similar heading into last night's game against San Francisco as I did heading into the Texans, of like, come on, this should be, and the Texans was, and that felt great. And I think because that felt great, I allowed myself to feel a little better heading into last night, and then that made it feel even worse.
I wanted to feel that way going into this game. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, the spread indicated that the game would be close, but you figured that they would have their pulse on exactly what San Francisco has been doing right over the past couple of years. It's now 5 straight that they've lost. You mentioned missed tackles, you mentioned defensive backs, lapse in just mental mistakes, right? Little things that you can clean up, little details. So what is it about the identity of this team that you see right now?
I mean, speaking specifically to last night's loss, it was a little heartbreaking in that, like, the week before with the Titans, if you take back the 14 points that Stafford indirectly or directly gave them, we win that game, right? So the Titans is like ugly mistakes and a little bit of a fluke, and Titans are a playoff team. So like there were reasons to kind of hold our head up after the Titans game, I think, or at least it was easier to spin towards the positive. This one, that's not the case. Even with those early mess ups, that is not the case. 10-31, they still got so many more points than we gave them. And this is a 3-5 team in our division. Like, the fact that we have lost to Arizona and San Francisco in the division makes me a little less hopeful for our postseason run. They're throwing a lot of flashy money trade deal, and they're not even honestly spending that much money, but they're doing all these name recognition deals, which is like makes for an exciting article on The Athletic. But last night's game made me go like, oh no.
Yeah,
because there's just a strategic thing. And thinking back about sort of the McVay era, there are not too many comeback in the fourth quarter games that I can think of. Now, I could be wrong, but those great runs of like, it's over and oh my God, here we come. It's not that. There have been plenty of back and fourth quarter games. And for me, the best football game I've ever seen in my life was Monday Night Football, Rams Chiefs.
And that was the first time you and I talked.
Yeah. And that was, it's just like, that was thrilling. And so I don't have a gear or a slot in my heart yet for McVay's Rams for a big fourth quarter push come from behind. We either need to dominate out the gate and then control the clock, or it feels more often than not a little doom and gloom.
So we have known you best from Saturday Night Live throughout your whole career, but we've been following you all the way since the Amanda Show. So is there a set that you would compare all of this star power to? One that surrounds this current team, and then conversely, one that you would compare to the 2018 team, which we all felt was a little bit near and dear or closer to our hearts and more personal.
Sure. Okay. Using that analogy, I feel like this team is like an episode of SNL that like a former cast member hosts, like a Jimmy Fallon episode, because like it's going to be a great monologue, right? And you're feeling good. It might even happen around the holidays, but you're going to see like great talent show up and try to do things they've done before, but maybe not as effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2018 Super Bowl team, for me, is probably like the best time I had at SNL, or like the kind of the most fulfilling creative season was, I think, like maybe my third season, where I'd been made a full cast member. Like I was no longer featured. I was a full cast member, and I had some recurring sketches, and things were really working, and I felt productive, and I felt useful to the show, which is always kind of the feeling you're chasing week after week. So that'd be my answer.
So I'll tell you what, we watched the Charlie Brown Christmas every single year where you were playing Linus. So I'll tell you what, that's just one of my favorites of all time. But just in general, right? Like I think when you talk about Jimmy Fallon coming back and hosting an episode, that star power, Von Miller, OBJ, talents that were relevant back 2015, 2016, 2017, when the league was a completely different space, right? So I'm just kind of wondering, right, you understand Los Angeles, you've been there for quite some time. Les Snead, Tony Pastor, Sean McVay, Stan Kroenke, they've built a team that is looking to connect with the fan base of Los Angeles, which is really kind of a big piece of this game, right? You want to be able to fit that puzzle piece in, connect with the fan base, bring as many fans in as you can, sell as many pieces of merchandise, right? All that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So how do you think that what they're trying to do there is now playing in the identity of this team? And why do you feel like they're lacking some toughness in the trenches and at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I mean, interesting. I think that outside of the city, there's definitely Los Angeles has a reputation of kind of having fair weather sports fans. There's also a lot of teams and a lot of sports here. It's also a big city, and it is also a city of transplants, right? Like, I myself am a native born and raised, but a lot of people who I know and have worked with, certainly in the showbiz industry, come from all over the country, all over the world. So people come here if they're a football fan with their own team, especially because for the majority of my lifetime, LA didn't have a football team. But what I have seen on the ground firsthand since the first preseason game against the Cowboys back at the Coliseum is a very passionate LA fan base. Now, I think what you're alluding to of like name star recognition to, celebrity flash, Hollywood glam, trying to create a narrative of that in the city of angels, the city of Hollywood, the city of showbiz. Maybe that's part of a conscious decision. I would also reverse engineer it and say that a lot of these players, or at least specifically OBJ, is like, where do I want to sort of like rest between games and where can I accomplish the most between games for my brand and business moving forward outside of a football stadium. Los Angeles is hard to beat for that, so I think that there's some appeal there. I would think, and again, just purely guessing, but that McVay and Snead are looking at some of that flash, if anything, to be a Trojan horse. Like, that's worst case scenario, you know what I mean? And there were a couple plays last night where OBJ was already satisfying that, where he's pulling defensive backs off of Kupp to continue that production, right? And again, like last night was so disheartening just because the energy seemed to get in the team's head, and there were so many bobbled, dropped catches. I think most of those were like on the back shoulder or a little behind or a little up, so like obviously there were plenty of like, oh, you should have had that, but there was also like some of them were struggled targets. So I've switched gears now, I think, from your original question.
No, you're fine.
But I think in terms of like, I think every professional team wants their fan base to be excited. Mm-hmm. Do I think that the LA Rams franchise is trying to collect as much name talent to get to help expand the fan appeal in the city? Maybe, but my instinct is more that the players want to come here because of the city, Mm-hmm. And we have, and like I think I started saying, we have a really strong, dedicated fan base, and it's been really cool to be a part of that and watch it grow too, and see people get excited with a brand new home, a brand new stadium.
Well, it's interesting too, right? You could evaluate just the overall growth from 2017 to 2018, and you could argue that winning brings that kind of culture. Winning brings fans, opposed to star power and Von Miller, OBJ, whoever else it is that you want to bring in. So
I think you're exactly right. I remember that first playoff game against the Falcons at the Coliseum that we ended up losing. Like I don't know why I'm so focused on parking. Clearly, I'm a Los Angeles native because I'm so focused on transit and parking. But I'm not kidding. Those first 2 to 3 seasons, it was like me and Tom Morello in the parking lot, and nobody else was there. And that first playoff game against the Falcons, it took like an hour to get in and 2 hours to get out. And it was mind blowing, but it was exciting because people were excited to show up and support.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, personally, like, I think the way I feel about this team, right, the way that their identity is kind of just playing into the product that's on the field right now, right? So you kind of want something. You want them to be able to evolve in that bye week to a team that has a little bit of a tougher identity, because that really kind of matches what goes on in Los Angeles, right? The grittiness, to be able to overcome adversity. Hang up a new quote. If it's "we, not me's," it's not working, hang up something else that inspires a group of people. There's just things that I think that they could do that I feel like, from a personal perspective, you as a fan, you know that they have it in them from 2018. So you're just kind of looking to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, you're making an interesting point in that, like, I'm with the Rams for life, man. I'm locked into my season tickets for life, and I'll be there win or lose because I love the game, I love the culture, and I love my city first and foremost. But I wonder if it feels a little bit harder to lose because, as a fan, you expect, with all that name recognition and all that talent, they should be doing better. And listen, it's also like, calm down, Taran. They're 7-3. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing fine. But I think what you're speaking to, and what we both kind of feel in our gut, is that where they're losing and where they're falling short, it feels like something rotten deeper than just on the surface. You know what I mean? It feels like why are we only winning circumstantially? And when our back is against the wall and it comes down to skill and perseverance and determination, we don't stand a chance.
Well, that's the thing too. And then on top of it, on social media, you become the meme team, right? So there's videos, there's arguments on the sidelines, there's all this stuff that comes out about that just wasn't a part of the initial identity of McVay's regime, McVay and Snead's regime.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be something we have to consistently monitor, right? The rest of the season, you don't want to see OBJ yelling at Jalen Ramsey, who's yelling at Raheem Morris in the playoffs. But for right now, if it's something that they can kind of sit on, let marinate, and focus on for the next game for the Packers, which is a huge game coming up, they're going to be in a good spot. So, Taran, another thing I wanted to ask you too, overall positions, is there one area specifically where you feel like they could essentially add some talent? I know there's so much talent on this team already, but is there a specific position group? We saw Higbee struggle yesterday. Is there something that comes to mind?
I think the struggle, like, look, who has more opportunities than Cooper Kupp? You know what I mean? Like, he's not to take away from him, but yeah, of course he's the number one receiver because we throw to him more than half the time, you know? So I think it's that. And I think, like, yeah, Higbee hasn't been utilized in that way. And I would give Stafford credit of, like, it's his first season with this team. And yes, he's been practicing. Yes, we're 10 games in, but he's still getting to know everybody. He's still getting, I think you have to earn his trust there. And I think in earning that trust, he's going to go to whoever he thinks can make him look good, right? Like, he's clearly, his favorites are Kupp and Van Jefferson. And, like, Woods being hurt is so heartbreaking because he's the best and has done so many incredible things for this team and does so much off the ball work when he's on the field. But Woods has not been looked after this season, or has not been gone to the same way that Goff would. I think there was obviously more trust between Goff and Woods, perception wise, just watching as a fan. So in terms of, like, adding talent, I don't think tight end. I miss John Johnson. I miss Corey Littleton. And I know that Jalen is undeniably, like, running the entire backfield and sweeping side to side. But I think, like, if you had to add talent to any position, it would be probably the safety position for me. If only for, like, a little speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to evaluate Taylor Rapp. You have to evaluate David Long Jr., Robert Rochelle, Right? I think
Yep.
that second defensive back position is completely vulnerable. And then if you could mix in another, Pro Bowl caliber safety, I
Yeah.
think that takes you to the next level. I thought Stefan Gilmore would have been a great piece for them earlier on in the season, who ended up going to Carolina, who killed us in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, you look at those things. He would have been a piece similar to Von Miller that I felt like they could have added. It gives them a much better chance to go win the Super Bowl opposed to OBJ.
Yeah.
But last night there was a moment in this game, that fake field goal attempt. Whether it was a blunder on the snap, I don't know what Johnny Hecker was thinking or whoever it was that was holding the ball there. But do you think that it's going to eventually lead to the fact that McVay will inevitably lose faith in Matthew Stafford the same way that he did in Jared Goff over time?
I mean, you hope not. I think part of, from what I observed and sensed, the part of like the downfall or the breakup of Goff McVay was that Goff was like a really good soldier. Goff was like, he'd do what you told him to do, but in terms of like switching into that other gear and extending plays and stuff, maybe there wasn't as much there as McVay would hope for. And so like that extra little bit of swagger is certainly something Stafford brings, right? That didn't feel like it was there before. I don't, it's a shame that that 3 out of 7 games, which should be like no big deal, feel like a bigger deal to me, at least, because the bad has been so bad.
Right.
That safety throw interception, like that was like, I could do that, like, and that's just like, it felt like a worst case scenario. It didn't feel like, oh, Higbee bobbled it and ended up in the guy's hand. That happens in football. Damn,
Sure.
That sucks. That felt like that's what the worst kind of quarterback does.
Yeah.
So my instinct is to be like, no, McVay and Stafford will be fine. But like on the current trajectory, possibly. We're also like, there's a little bit of struggle at the offensive line. Losing Sebastian Joseph Day was a huge hit. And I think that's shifted since he's been gone. It's that's been a big part of the shift. So if you're going to add talent on the offensive side, obviously you always want the strongest line possible. But still, they're doing a great job. I mean, he has time. He's just being particular, and they've talked about that as a team.
Yeah, it's so true. He is probably just being particular about which routes he wants to go to and whatnot. I think the thing with Goff is there was some intangibles with him. He was so resilient. You could throw whatever you wanted at him. He would take as much shit as you threw at him. You could cuss him out after the game, tell him whatever he needed to hear, and there was full transparency on both ends of that relationship. So I still think you're going through some growing pains, but I think it's just something you have to monitor, right? I mean, if they're not on the same page going into Week 11 against Green Bay, you got Arizona again, you got San Francisco again. It's going to be something where I think that patience is shorter with Stafford opposed to what it was with Jared Goff over 3.5, 4 years. So I'm nervous on that regard. I mean, he's in a 2-year deal, but doing anything rash ahead of time would be just uncomfortable as a fan.
But not unheard of for this front office. Yeah.
And they will eat dead money if they have to. They will eat it up. This season, do you think that if they fall short, is this season considered a failure if they fall short of, for example, a divisional round, an NFC championship game? They lose in the divisional round like they did last year. Is this whole season a failure?
No, I don't think so. I think that there's so much excitement. Like you said, there's been so much like fun, buzzy press, which is enjoyable. Being in the brand new stadium for the first time is great. And if you come out of that with a winning season, like, I don't think it's realistic or fair to see it as a failure. I just don't. Again, there's that perceived extra pressure, right? Like talking about, we've got all this talent, we've got all these names, we've got all these great stats, we should be doing the best. And it's like, that's just perception. It's the same thing with having the Super Bowl in your home stadium that year. There's a perceived but unrealistic, we got to get to the Super Bowl. This is our field, our stadium this year. If we don't, we're failures. But like, NFL is a competitive place, man. That's the whole thing.
Well, football's different, right? I mean, you could in your personal life, you could rally off of other people be a contributor in your role. Like, for
Sure.
example, for you, you could be a contributor. You could rally off of other people, their energy, and work together to put out the best possible film. Football is the same way in that regard, but I just think that there are specific moments right now. There's so much star power in that room, in that locker room. I think that there's going to be a lot of, hey, we should be doing this, right? Or we should be reevaluating this area of the game, which to me is very unsettling, the fact that they have 2 weeks to kind of sit on that. So I don't know, just in your personal experience, if you've ever kind of been through that, but it's just something that you're going to have to sit on and wait and see.
No, I think that's right. I think that sounds familiar, and I think you're right that there's enough people that can, point to their previous pedigree to go like, I know what I'm talking about. And the unfortunate reality is that multiple people can be right and disagree.
It's true. Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's just one thing we're going to have to keep watching is what Stafford does, the pressure aspect, big games. I mean, playing from behind, you thought he was going to be somebody that can come in and you're down 31-10, no problem. They're going to come back similar to what we saw in that Monday Night Football game, what we saw against the Bills last year. So it's an ongoing saga, Taran, as you know.
Too. It's coming into the fourth, and I felt the same thing, but they eat up 8 to 11 minutes getting one touchdown. And you know what I mean? You have to, and there was, he did try to go big to Van Jefferson there. I think it was Van Jefferson, and it just didn't connect. But you picking at it like that, that's first half strategy.
Well, I know. We'll end it with this. Is it the 49ers that is your most disliked divisional rival?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it has to be.
Absolutely.
It's them or it's Seattle has been creeping up, I think, over the past 7-8 years, but San Francisco will be the outright owners forever.
It's easier to not hate Seattle because we have their number.
Yeah,
Niners have our number. We have Seattle's number. So it's sort of like, but yeah, absolutely. There's no team. There's no team visiting or otherwise that will like give me a bigger pit in my stomach than the Niners now, 5 in a row.
Gut wrenching. Well, again, Taran, enjoy your Thanksgiving. We got a little while to our next football game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, there's drama every day with this team, so hang in there. Very much appreciate it. This is your second time on the show. We hope to talk to you again soon, and just thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Go Rams.
You're the man. Peace.
Bye, dude.